It's almost like what we talk about on this call actually works.
Full volition. Yes.
Crazy.
Well, guys, I'd love to talk for my own benefit. I really do. I talk to myself. I talk to strangers. I talk to ghosts. But the most important conversations I have every day involve you so that you can go out there and talk to others as well. So this is all about taking information, taking the good value that we have and moving it forward, paying it forward. What would it be if I took all the information that I learned, everything that I've heard, I know, I understand, that I know to be true and valuable in this world, and I kept it for myself? One, that would make me a Scrooge McDuck, and no one likes Scrooge McDuck. Two, that would actually harm my ability to learn. Have you ever heard the saying, if you want to know something, teach it?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not only are you learning it for the understanding's sake, but to better your understanding of it, but also you have to then educate or talk about it. And you get other people's points of view. And from that, you will then learn at a deeper level of deeper understanding, and you're going to gain a lot more from it. And part of that is, if I'm teaching you, I must constantly develop myself as well. You can't pour from an empty cup. I've said that many times. Sometimes that means just your willpower or your overall essence of life might be a little drained. So it's very hard for you to give to others when you don't have it to give. So I take opportunities like this one here, which is the Glover University. Jeff Glover, who's a mega agent out of Dallas, out of Detroit, one of the other D words, does 100 deals a year. His team does close to 800, 900 deals a year. And he had a class, quick little thing, it was $40. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna gamble a risk on a class I've never gone to, a person I've never heard teach. And I'd say 80% of the stuff in that class is stuff that I've directly said on this call. And I think Jalen and Chris that were in the class can attest to it, even Anthony, that there's a lot of things that we talk about in this call every single day that he talked about in his, business plan for top producers. But there was two things that I took away from it that I wanted to share with you this morning. And one of them was a very awesome script. Now, the number one objection we've heard from buyers lately is what?
Rates.
Exactly. Rates. We're going to wait for rates to come down. Is that a common occurrence? Well, we've talked about it on this call. We've talked about the psychology behind it and what actually happens. So what will happen if rates come down?
Prices go up.
Prices go up. Why will prices go up? Prices go up because more buyers come into the market.
Yeah.
Well, I love the way that Corey, Jeff Glover, I don't know what the hell his name is. Corey Glover, Jeff Glover, Mr. Glover, I don't know. But this guy, he framed it. I love it because he says, you know what? You're the blank person this week to tell me that they've wanted to wait for rates to come down. And you could fill in that blank. I put 7 because 7 is just a good number. You could say you're the 9th person this week. You're the 3rd person today that has told me that they're waiting for rates to come down. And if everyone's waiting for rates to come down, what do you think will happen to demand and pricing when they do? We've all had the examples. We'd all talk about it. 2021, right? Mm-hmm. Tell them, you know what? Back in 2021, when we had 5, 6 to 35 to 45 offers on a house and people are paying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 over list price. So my question for you is, would you rather buy it now while prices are still fair and then refinance later? Or do you want to wait and pay more with everyone else?
Correct. That's the married date the rate.
Yeah, I hate that term. And we'll talk about that in a second. Don't say, marry the house, date the rate, because people may not be able to refinance and the rates may not come down. But we'll talk about that in a second. But you can always refinance a mortgage, but you can't renegotiate a purchase price. So I love the questions in there, right? You know what? Hey, you're this Tina. Thank you so much for telling me that. I can understand that you want to wait for rates to come down. So would I. But you're the 7th person this week that's told me that. And that's kind of concerning. Do you know why? You get the look like Tina just gave you, like that. What do you mean? Well, why don't I share with you? If everyone's waiting for rates to come down, what do you think is going to happen when they do and demand increases?
Low inventory.
Yeah, right. Were you looking at houses back in 2020, 2021 when the mayhem was going on? Right. Things got crazy. So my question is, would you rather buy a house now while prices are relatively fair and and potentially be able to refinance later? Or do you want to wait and pay more with everybody else? Then you're leaving room for strategic pausing. I love that. I absolutely love that when you hear like that question, like, you know what? You're the 7th person I've heard this week tell me that they want to wait for rates to come down, or the 9th or the 15th or whatever it is. If you've got agents in your office that have heard that, technically right now there's 17 of you on this call, and all 17 of us have heard at one point people say they want to wait for rates to come down. So you can say, you know what, I just this week I've heard from 17 other people that they're waiting for rates to come down, which scares me. And here's why. Because if rates come down, what do you think is going to happen to prices? And some of your buyers are going to not know. They're not going to understand the law of supply and demand. So that's why you have to come up with a reference, reference 2021. Back in 2021, we had so many buyers wanting to buy houses that we were seeing offers $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 over an already inflated list price. Well, those buyers are still out there. The demand hasn't stopped. Interest rates kind of slowed it down. So when interest rates drop, all these people that are waiting for them are going to get back in the market. What do you think that's going to do to your ability to buy a house? So let me ask you, would you rather buy a house now when prices are decently fair? I love the word fair. I was talking to another agent and using that word. It's one of the best negotiation terms you can use, is fair. Or would you want to wait and pay more like everybody else? Let's break down the psychology of that, right? What's the number one fear of a buyer?
Paying too much,
Yeah.
not being able to afford their payments.
Right. We create some future fear. Right now it's expensive. It's expensive now. But what happens in the future if this said dam breaks and these water rise? Doesn't things get more expensive? How is that going to go to your affordability? Buyers don't want to make the wrong decision. That's their number one thing, is I don't want to make the wrong decision. So we have to look at it as helping them make a better decision, and better decisions are acting now. Now, we've all heard the term, marry the house, date the rate. Well, that's dangerous. And as Amanda's told us, and it was a very good conversation 2 weeks ago, and I have that video somewhere up on YouTube, that when you're looking at it that way, you're promising a buyer a better future, which is dangerous because you can't deliver that. What you're doing now is you're ensuring them to buy a house at a fairer price, because the uncertainty of the market will get them to not move. So you have to create certainty in an uncertain space. And by doing so is you're allowing them to think logically, right? I've had 8 people tell me this week that they're waiting for rates to go down. Now, I already have a batch of people thinking about doing something that is in line with what you're doing. Now, it also goes to say, I can create a logic trap of what do you think is going to happen to prices if demand increases? I'm setting them up for the right answer, right? Now we have a logic trap. They're the ones giving me the answer, so that way they can't fight me on it. Well, you said prices are going to go up. No, you did. What do you think is going to happen if everyone is waiting for rates to come down? What do you think will happen to demand and pricing when they do get their answer? That is a unconscious signature of the agreement, right? They're telling you so that way people don't go against their own word. So my question is, would you rather buy now while prices are fair and potentially refinance later, or wait and pay more with everybody else?
Potentially.
That's the word I added. He didn't use potentially, but I also saw the flaw in that conversation.
Right.
But that's what he says. Like we talk about, we learn something, we take it, we adjust it, we put it into action right away. It's a conversation we can have today. Somebody hits you with the, hey, Tiffany, I'm looking to buy a house, but we're going to wait till rates come down. Now you already have a bridge to overcoming that conversation. Well, thank you for letting me know. I completely understand. I too would wait until rates to come down, but you're the 7th person I've heard this week say that they're waiting for rates to come down, and that concerns me. And usually when you say that, you're going to get the eyebrow lift, you're going to get the head tilt, the Labrador cook, you're like what'd you say? But then you're like, hey, if everyone's waiting for rates to come down, what do you think is going to happen to demand and pricing when they do?
Concessions. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Audra.
Concessions are going to stop too.
Absolutely. Here's the second part of that. Well, He gave us 3 objections to this, but the first one we've already talked about. What happens if you wait and they don't come down, right? We've talked about that. What happens if they don't change? What happens if that future never shows up? We've handled that 100 times. The last one was, so at what rate would you be interested in purchasing? Or at what rate would you, be comfortable purchasing at? Again, that comfortability, right? At what rate have you thought about pulling the trigger? And if they're realistic, like if they don't tell you 2.5%, you can just put them on a drip campaign and forget about them. But if they say like 5.5 or maybe 6%, something like that, sub 6s, we can go into tactical response. What service do we provide to a buyer to help them get a lower interest rate? Audra kind of gave it away with concessions. What can concessions be used for?
Buying the rate down.
Buying the rate down. So Jalen, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying you'd be comfortable buying a house if your interest rate was like 5.5%, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what if I could get the seller to buy down that rate? He's so lost in thought he forgot to say anything.
Oh, well, yeah. Sorry.
But that's the thing is, I wanted to showcase, notice how I just stopped talking. I made a very uncomfortable silence for most of you. But when you have an uncomfortable silence, let it sit, because you're going to get them to move on that answer. Again, what if I got the seller to buy down that rate? And then you're going to get the head nods like, well, yeah, that would make sense. I would think about buying a house. Great. It sounds like it's a good idea for us to get together and talk more about this. You go into the appointment. Even on the second one, right? Do you want to buy now or do you want to pay more later, right? And they're just like, well, I really don't want to pay more. Great. It sounds like it's a good idea for us to get together and talk more about this and go over the process. When are you available? Go for the appointment. These are all bridges to an appointment. Well, what if they don't go down? Well, let's still buy a house. Well, it sounds like it's a good time for us to get together and talk more about this and go over the process. When are you available? Mornings or afternoons? We go into it. I thought that was I was really excited to share that with you guys this morning. Was that worth you showing up for 15 minutes at least?
Yes.
6 of you. Thank you. The other 11 of you, F off. Don't care. As long as one of you got it. See, the rule of 80-20. Only 20% of you are going to listen to what I say. And of that, only 20% of those people are going to put it into action. So that means one of you is going to use this script probably today, and it's going to land you an appointment, and you're going to sell a house. And Tina says it's me. I'm going to do it. I believe you, Tina. I believe you.
Dan, the next objection, though, is obviously high prices.
Compared to what?
Ever.
Well, yeah. But also,
I just think you have a
You're
good
absolutely
answer.
right, man.
I have something I use, but I know that that's their very next question. Well, yeah, even if interest rates could be lower, prices are still too high. So I just feel like that's the next objection we need a really good answer to.
you're absolutely right, Mara. Prices are too high. And if more buyers come into the market and demand increases, what's going to happen to those prices?
Higher.
Yeah, but again, I think they're not thinking logically, and that's why I usually mention demographics. Like literally, we're not gonna see more houses for about 10 years just by demographics until we have maximum baby boomer die off. But I don't know if, people just don't think that. And the other good stat I heard recently was like since the crash between 2008 and 18, builders hardly built anything, and yet like 34 million more people were born, and we don't have housing for them. So I thought those two things were helpful.
Yeah. If you've got somebody that is factually charged, like a high C or maybe even a high S, that you could get some facts to where they can make that logical progression on their own. But when you go into logic, you're removing the element of emotion. Logic makes us think. Emotions make us
React.
Right, sometimes.
act crazy sometimes, right? But we want people to make action. We want people to move on a decision. So if someone hits you with that, well, prices are still high. What was my very first question? It's almost like it was automatic.
Compared to what?
Compared to what? Yeah, prices are high. If you're comparing them to 1990, you know what? Compared to a grizzly bear, I'm not that big. Compared to what? One, you're trying to understand the frame of reference the buyer's coming from. Hey, prices are too high. Okay, they're absolutely so high. They're up. No, you don't know what they're talking about. You have no idea what they're comparing to. Well, Martha, thank you so much for telling me that. I understand the prices are too high. What are you comparing them to? Boom. Understand where they're coming from. If you go right into problem solving, You know, Billy, I know prices are high right now. They've always been high. They've been higher than they've ever been. They're the super highest prices, and that's okay. They're not going to come down anytime soon. You're giving someone directions, not knowing where they're at.
So
If I
what
tell
is
you,
your next
how do you get to
statement?
go ahead, Mara?
So what is your next statement? Because that only goes so far compared
No,
to
it-
what,
it-
well, when we
run-
bought 10
run
years
with it.
ago, 2 years ago.
Run with it, Mara. Mara, compared to what?
2 years ago.
Well, actually, 2 years ago, market hit its highest point. We've seen prices kind of stabilize from there. At what price would you be comfortable buying?
Half the price they are now.
Okay. Are you willing to buy half the house?
No, that's why I'm waiting.
Then show me how that makes sense, Mara.
I just think prices are gonna go down.
Half price.
Right?
So
Mara,
Dan, can I say something real quick?
please do.
Do you have that chart that Kristen Cole has that she got it at Mega Camp or Family Reunion, and it's a chart that I carry around all the time, and I have, people that are doing open houses have, several copies of. It shows the market from the amount of sales, like from 1998, 2000, somewhere in that range. And it's like a steady slope up. Like you can see the market in Phoenix has gone up about 3% per year on average, despite the roller coaster effect that's been happening. The Phoenix market is, or I don't want to say Phoenix, Maricopa County, Pinal County, Arizona. The market's always been cyclical, right? But that line continues to go up with a 3% appreciation or so each year over time. So there's never a bad time to buy good real estate. If you help your clients find a house that has good resale value in any market, you're always going to be in good shape if you go long on it. Where people have a problem right now is if they're the type that go buy and sell every year, they're going to get hit perhaps. But right now we can see the steady upstream of all of these homes. I mean, for what, 20, 25 years, there's a proven track record. And if you carry this graph around with you, it's excellent to show these people that are just waiting. But I love that quote. There's never a bad time to buy good real estate in Arizona. At some time, you got to jump off the cliff and do it, or you're never going to make that wealth for yourself.
Yep. And that's where like the conversation leads is you got a graphic. It's called the trend line. Real estate always falls back to the trend line. In Mara's situation, she's got a buyer that is illogical, thinking about things that are not going to happen. So I can say compared to what she said 2 years ago. Well, 2 years ago, prices were higher than they are now. But I think what she meant is before they boomed 2 years ago. So the next question you can ask again is, what kept you from buying back then? You're asking questions to sort it out. What kept you from buying? Well, we were waiting for prices to come down. And what did that cost you? Well, we know, and this is where you can bring out, this is the entry to that information. If you have it with you, you can just say, well, do you mind if I share something with you? Right? Well, we know if we look at the last 30 years of real estate, there's been about a 4% trend line time over time. Even though the market's gone up and down and we've seen some cyclical change, it's never a bad time to buy good real estate in Arizona.
I think it also goes back to their motivation too. People are either running towards something or running away from something. So like if we were to find you a home in a comfortable monthly payment or comfortable price point for you, then what would this do for you and your family?
Exactly. So that was my next thing is once you get that graphic and you kind of set that line, it's never a bad time to buy good real estate in Arizona or in South Carolina or North Carolina or in wherever the hell you guys are. Insert your area, boom. Then you just ask, out of curiosity, what's making you want to buy a house? Find the motivation. You guys know my belief is lifestyle over logic. So people are going to make a choice for their lifestyle that does not make sense logically. But being able to dance with someone like that, it's just a couple of questions. Compared to what? What kept you from buying then? What did it cost you? Well, what are you waiting for now? Are you looking to lose more money? Well, interest rates are really high. I completely understand them. Prices are high, interest rates are high, but did you know that the median income has also increased over the last 5 years? Minimum wage is up too. Everything's more expensive these days. And the only way to hedge against inflation is with real property. Lock in your rate, get that 4% average trend, and sit on it for a while. But if someone wants to buy a house and flip it every year, is this the market for them? It absolutely is if you find the right house. But there's also probably 500 other people looking for that exact same house. Some really good feedback today. I'm happy my other coaches showed up. Sarah, Marta, you guys are welcome back anytime.
Thanks, Nancy.
It reinforces what we do here every day. Bring your agents, bring yourselves, bring your questions.
Mhm. So is it safe to say homes appreciate all the time?
You can't guarantee the future, Audra, but based on the 35-year trend that we know, which is, again, having that graphic, based on the information of the past, we can kind of predict the future. Even with the unforeseen pandemic that would have been like right here in the graph, prices dropped and then they soared and then they dropped and they came up a little bit, but it's all still following right along the same 4.2% trend line. Or in your area, the trend might be a little less or a little more. Tucson's trend is higher than it ever has been because we've had a huge uptick in value. Phoenix has been devastated by their median sales price, but other communities a little bit more rural haven't been. Talk to the area that you're dealing in. I love Marta's example. I'm not the type that brings visual aids, but that's a really good thing that I'm going to put into play. I'm going to have that graph saved on my phone so I can pull it up quickly. And the last thing I want to talk about in the last 2 minutes is, and we'll talk more about the social media stuff tomorrow, is facts tell, stories sell. We can beat people to death with facts and data. Logically, they're going to think about it. They're going to chew on it. They're going to go home and talk about it. They will never make a decision because you facted. You effed them up with facts. There you go. But you have to turn those facts into stories. And the way that Marta said is there's never a bad time to buy good real estate. Isn't that sentence in itself a story? Never a bad time. Once upon a time, right? Never a bad time to buy good real estate. Well, if you look at the trend line, market is showing that it's gone up. So if you stay in your house at least 3 years, you should see a profitable valuation. And no one cares. But tell me, what are you going to do with the house? What are you looking to accomplish? What is your motivation? Mara threw it in the chat for you guys. This is why I love this woman. She gets 3 gold stars today.
Gary Keller from Family Reunion this spring. I did. Yeah, it made an impression. I liked that slide. So.
It's the same one Marta was talking about. I think it's maybe a little different format, but that's exactly what we're talking about. Everything goes back to the trend line. Don't wait and buy and wait. Right now, your money is safe in a savings account. You're getting 3.5%, 4.5%, maybe even 5.25%. But if the market takes a shit tomorrow, what's the first thing they cut? Your house, however, you just have to paint it. Take care of the roof. Fix the plumbing, mow the yard, pick the weeds, live in it. You know what? If your landlord wants to increase rate, what can you do? You can find somewhere else to live. Once you set a 30-year fixed note mortgage, what's the only thing that's going to affect the payment on your home?
Taxes and insurance.
Friggin' taxes. And can you control that? Yeah, vote for the right people. Or the wrong people that make the right choices. Whatever, it doesn't matter to me. But the only way to hedge against inflation is to set permanent assets. My electric bill's $500 during the winter and $1,100 during the summer. They wanted to put solar on the house. My solar payment would have been $600 a month. That would have been a fixed cost for the next 20 years. I almost thought about it. It makes sense. It's a fixed amount. It doesn't change. Even if prices go up, the sun's not going to go down. Well, if it blows up, we have a whole lot more to worry about. So think about logically to get the facts and data, get the resources, the graphics, all that stuff in place. But then how can you tell the story that's going to matter to the person you're talking to? Turn the facts and data, turn the graphics, turn the information, the boring BS into a story that is consumable by the consumer you're talking to. Remember, we are not talking to realtors. They do not understand our jargon. Don't use it. Some people don't even know what the word appreciation means. And when you ask them, what's appreciation? They're like, I like you. You're nice. Yeah, yes, technically, that's correct. So turn the facts into stories, be able to tell a better story. I'm going to have this video up later today, so you can go back and check on the objection handling there. But I hope you use it today. Remember that. You're the 7th or 8th person I've heard from this week that waiting. And let me tell you why that concerns me. Because your number one job as a real estate professional is to add perspective. And if you can show people the error in their ways and help them make better decisions, you can keep them in the ether and help them make better decisions that will go along with what you're selling. I'm sorry, you're in sales. Sometimes you're going to have to tell people what they don't want to hear. Did you learn something today?
Yes.
There's in the chat, there's that graphic if you want to download it real quick. I'm going to keep the call on just a tad bit longer if you haven't done so already. Any further questions, comments, thoughts? We went a little long, but I think it was worth it.
Mhm.
Always worth it.
Always worth it.
Mhm.
Dan, one more thing. I have a post on my Facebook that I made last week that I thought was really good, but apparently others didn't because I only got like 3 or 4 likes on it. But I broke down, I have like a picture of this hand, you know, this drowning person saying, "Are you drowning in a sea of buyer confusion?" And it has why you should buy now versus, you know, what the market looked like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And there's a bunch of comparison examples. If any of y'all are want to check it out, you could copy it and use it just to try to communicate to our buyer pool that, I mean, it's a fantastic time to buy right now. We have a little sweet spot. But that social media, I'm sure Dan will talk to that about that tomorrow.
Yeah,
But
we're talking about social media
it's
tomorrow.
a pretty thorough post. So
And we're going to talk about how to increase engagement on a business post tomorrow. So if you want to come back tomorrow, it'll help with that.
Yeah, I see it. Hand in the water. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. So awesome, my friends. Thank you for showing up and adding value to my life, to the other coaches' lives, and to each other's. It's more important than ever that we stick together and get stronger, because as we lean into the new year, it's going to take a new you to make more business happen. So let's go get your unfair share. Sound good?
God.
All
High
right.
five.